Alright, hey everybody. First off, real quick, hopefully this will be my shortest video ever, because it's just a quick rundown. Secondly, I'm by no means a, any good at this stuff. I consider myself a beginner. Um, but I pretty much like learned on the road when I was like doing CL, um, and just like learned on the spot. Created this stuff for myself, for my team to be able to track like scrims. This is a scrim track sheet. Um, but this is obviously the blank version. I deleted all the info out of there and stuff. But there's probably people out there way better than me that knows way more than me. I make this on Excel and then I transfer it over to Google Sheets. That way that everybody can have access because you can share access on Google Sheets and anyone can go in and look at it with access at any time. Whereas Excel is just doesn't have the same availability like for people online anyway. So with that being said, I just put in some basic info here so you can kind of see. But this is a scrim track sheet. So for any team, T2, T3, T4, it's kind of useful in my opinion because it lets you allows you to see a lot of things. I have other sheets here that break down each map much more in depth than this. This is just a basic sheet. I'm not gonna go show you guys those because you know there's just a lot more work and details and shit put into that. But this will get any team going for the most part. So over here we have just like the stat breakdown of basically everything. This is opening kill, opening death chart for like per week. This chart is showing the maps played, so that way we can see how many maps we're playing each week, what maps we're playing, what maps we're not playing, all that crap. And then over here is just like kind of a more basic breakdown of like the maps played itself, right? So when I put info in this table, it pulls over to this table. Um, I'm sure, and this is why I'm saying I'm a beginner. I'm sure there's a way like that I could, because I break it down into weeks, as you can see, that if I put the info in here, it'll pull it over. It's just something that I didn't spend the time to look into doing. But I'm sure there's a way. So anyway, moving on. So if we look at this chart, we say 10, again, we'll put in 10, 15, 20, 21 is the date. Let's say we played DZ, right? Who cares? It's a T1 team. Played them on Chalet, right? We lose, let's say 3-7, right? All right, so then you can see automatically this side updates. So originally I already had one in, put in for Clubhouse. It was a win, so it shows 100%. Now we're showing Chalet with one time played, 0% win, right? Because we're only tracking win percentage. And then here, right, it tracks total rounds. So in this column, rounds won, rounds lost, it tracks total rounds played. So far, input, we've played a total of 21 rounds. 10 of the rounds we have won, 11 of the rounds we've lost. So we're in the red, right? So that's what this sheet is. So, date, team. If you're, I would say only like high T3 where you're actually actively scrimming T2 teams, or if you're Challenger League, Pro League, I assume Pro League players have an analyst. They don't need this kind of shit. But the lower tier teams don't have anything like this in my experience. So you probably don't need the tier list here because, most likely the people who would be watching this is most likely in T3, T4, because they don't really have analysts, or if they do have analysts, they don't really, have too much experience, right? That's why they're in T3, T4. They got to build their experience, learn their stuff. I can't find anything like this out there. That's why I decided to make this to help some people out in terms of kind of what to track, in my opinion. Everybody has their own opinion. So moving on, I don't think most teams that are watching this, unless you're like way up there, like what I was doing, you probably don't need the tier list here, so you can knock that out. But if you want the team too, you could. But in my opinion, when I was scrimming a lot in T3, you don't know who the hell the teams are, so maybe even team name might not be that beneficial. But map would be useful, your win-loss would be useful, round win, round loss would be useful, right? Because you could track that stuff. Then we could start to see like patterns in terms of like, all right, Chalet is a weak map because we played it, let's say 10 times. We've only won it 3 times, right? And then we could start looking at the round differentials too, as like how many times are we winning as opposed to losing in terms of rounds, like are they even close games? And then you should like, okay, we need to watch Chalet VOD reviews because we have problems on Chalet. It's a weak map of ours. You don't really want it. You want to try your best to strengthen all your maps. You know what I mean? So then you could put your focus on Chalet because like, okay, we have a much better win percentage on other maps, right? So that's kind of the whole purpose of this. The whole purpose of this table here is, like I said, to show how many maps total you're playing each week, so you can kind of keep track of like, so you could see this week was a real hot week. This week was not such a hot week, right? Much less played, but stuff was going on. But anyway, so you can kind of see like how many maps were played, and each time, and like that way you can say like, okay, it looks like we're playing Oregon a lot here. We probably need to add in some coastline, and so when you go into your scrims, you're starting to add coastline in there, stuff like that, right? So you're keeping track. That way you can pay attention to that type of stuff as well as over here what your win percentage is. This one, so like I said, I would track week by week. So let's say 10, 15, 20, 21. I changed the names in here, because I don't want people getting mad. So our players are Sterling Archer is your uncle. So let's say, this week, let's say Sterling Archer is our entry. So let's say out of the week, Sterling gets 10 opening kills, 5 opening deaths, whatever. And then Archer here gets 8 opening kills and 13 opening deaths. And then we've got let's say is our flex player. Maybe something like 3 and 3 would be a little bit lower. Then we got our 2 supports, let's say, I don't know, 3 and 5. Fuck, I don't give a shit, right? And then 1, 3, whatever. All right. So you get the point, right? So then we're looking at this, and we track it by week, right? So then if I go in this next week, and then we do it all again, and then we see that Archer here goes 5 and 12 next week. Okay, so then one of our entries is having a problem getting in the building. So then we got to identify what the problem is. Is it the droning? Is it he's careless? Is it, careless in terms of like running around un-ADS? Like there's so many things going into it. It's very complicated when you start thinking about it. But then you can go into VOD reviews, start watching with him, and start identifying the problems, and start fixing those little micro problems, and trying to get this more in the green of like more opening kills than opening deaths, right? And then if we look down here, let's say that Yor is support. We see that he's kind of in a decent amount of opening engagements, number 1, but number 2, he's also dying a lot in them. Like, let's say he's a smoke player. That's a problem, right? So then you identify that in this chart as like, oh shit, our smoke player is in a lot of opening engagements and he's dying a lot. Like, what the hell's going on there? You go in your VOD, you check it out, you see, oh, this is a fucking problem, right? And then you start addressing it. That's how you start fixing those little micro problems in terms of individual players. So I wouldn't recommend tracking stats at all for scrims except for opening kills, opening deaths, because stats and scrims are completely useless. If you're using your scrims correctly, it's for practice. You're learning. You know what I mean? Like it's not the same. It's like a league match, right? You want to track your league match stuff, but for scrims, tracking opening kills, opening deaths is pretty important to me, because then you can, like especially with your entries, you can track how they're doing, if they're being consistent, and then you can start identifying problems that they have that are inconsistent, making them inconsistent, all that shit, right? If you're a coach, if you're an analyst, if you're a team without a coach or an analyst, it still gives you an idea of like what's going on in your teams, and help like progressing your team forward. So this is just a quick rundown of like just a scrim track sheet that you can make. I'm not going to show you how to make it. I thought about doing that, but I was like, I had to learn on my own. There's really no resources out there to teach me what to look for, how to make it. I thought I would at least show you like what I look at in terms of just scrims alone. I have, like I said, these sheets down here are much more in depth per map breakdown, as well as I have a whole book that I was using while in Challenger League tracking just my opponents as well. That is way more in depth than this. But you know, this is I think useful to any team at any level. Not too hard to make. You can literally go on YouTube, look up videos, make it. It's not even that hard. And really, if you want to make it simpler, you don't even have to make it so it pulls info from another table. Like you could just manually make this table, type it in from the info over here. It makes you have to input a little bit more repetitively because you're putting info in multiple spots. But you know, it's much. You could learn that in like 30 minutes an hour. You know, if you really want to. So this, like I said, this is more for the lower tier teams, coaches, analysts, or players without coaches and analysts to kind of give you a direction on what I tracked, what I looked at, what could help you out in terms of information. So, thanks for your time. Enjoy your weekend.